slow up, no I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up. I don't ever slow up, no I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up and make a statement. I don't ever slow up, no I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up and make a statement. Everything I do so instinctive and so passionate. Every word I'm...
Hey, hello guys. Welcome to another podcast, volume 21. We're going to talk about the truth about the big tech and digital age bust. I have got, again, Lupiter and Adam Maxwell from Liberty Rising joining us today for this podcast. And I guess we'll go ahead and begin.
Yo, what's up, guys?
Hi.
All right. So this is a topic that I've been talking about in the Telegram channel. Like I said, the link is in the description for the Gonzalez Legacy group, where we discuss a lot of these topics that we talk about on the podcast and other types of interesting things that come up with current events. We also have the Straight Talk news channel, and that's current events, things that are going on within the with the podcast, as well as like current events and whatnot. But the reality is, I've been talking about this for at least a year or so now, at least a year to 6 months, about a what I call the digital Gilded age, and I compare or bring comparisons between the digital age and the Gilded age of the 1900s or late 1800s. That led up to the Great Depression, or at least, the Great Depression was a result of the collapse and whatnot in that time period. And we're seeing a lot of parallels 100 years later. As you know, in economy, a lot of people say that the economy does these cycles, these 100-year cycles. Some experts and economists talk about 100-year cycles in the economy. But I think the big one's coming, and I think it's going to be a repeat of the Great Depression, if not worse. So that being said, what are your comments on it, Mr. Maxwell?
I know about the cycles, but it's not something that I've personally looked into. When it comes to like the cyclical nature of history, sure, yes, history is cyclical because the systems tend to be the same. I would suggest that when the bust comes, and we know it will come, I would suggest it should be worse in absolute terms and perhaps in scale. I don't know about how well we will respond to it, but financially it should be worse than the Great Depression. The reason for that is someone said the other day, there are two reactions. One very sad, this is just like 1930s Germany, and one very happy, this is just like 1930s Germany. And someone said it's not, and I said, well, maybe not 1930s Germany, but let's take 100 years ago. We had the 1918 pandemic. We had central bank fuckery from 1913 onwards. Then we had all that intervention distortion caused the 1929 stock market bubble, the Great Depression, and World War II. Here we start with the central bank distortions. We have the 2020 pandemic. We have these black recessions. There are recessions going on all the time now, but the data is being distorted, hidden. It's a black recession, like the inflation, the real inflation figures, the kind of black economy figures are much worse than the official statistics they're putting out. And I am firmly on the side that we are in the midst of World War III. There is two major hot conflicts going on in the world. I'm hoping that we're not going to have another great power war, but I would say that we are in at least a second Cold War between BRICS and G7, BRICS and NATO. So the question is, when you have this malinvestment, zombie economy, excessive monetary stimulus, inflation, at a certain point, the economy is overheating and it has to come back to reality. It has to correct. It has to pop. So the question is when? And I think the extent of monetary distortion is so much worse now than it's ever been in the history of ever and ever could conceivably be. So I think certainly when reality comes back and we have to correct, it's going to be brutal.
Yeah, I mean that's very interesting. Like I said, Gerald Slinte says that the first there's trade wars, currency wars, and then there's actual shooting wars. And like I said, you're seeing as he portrays it and as I see it, it looks like this 100-year cycle is coming into fruition, I guess, because you have a zombie economy like you did, post, with the Great Depression and Weimar Republic, and then a rise of leaders and wars and things of that nature because, they wanted to accumulate assets and land and resources, a nation to nation state. But it's a little bit, some say that it was just as globalized then in trade as it was now. I mean, as I said before in the last podcast, Germany basically, the United States was heavily investing in Germany period of World War II, as well as in Japan. And then the war started. Japan attacked the United States, Pearl Harbor, and then Hitler declared war on the United States after the United States declared war on Japan. So, I mean, we're starting to see some parallels, or at least I'm showing parallels between China as Japan and Germany as Russia. Some people may view that differently, but you're starting to see that the United States is creating this axis of evil, so to speak, like the Bush administration did with Iran and Iraq and so on and so forth.
The United States is creating the axis of evil. It's the snakehead, and the NATO is this axis of evil. Is that what you've said?
Yeah, I mean, basically, during the Bush administration, they created this axis of evil with Syria, North Korea, or not Syria, but North Korea, Iraq, and Iran. They put these. I think this was. I forget who was the person that was coming. That came. He's a war hawk, but he had created this. He started demonizing these countries as America's biggest enemies and biggest threat to democracy. And now you're seeing that. It might have been Dick Cheney, but I think it was someone else. I think it might have been Karl Rove, but I'm not sure. I'd have to go look it up. Anyway, long story short, you're seeing that parallel today with the current administration, Biden and Trump, so to speak. Demonizing Palestine, Trump demonizing Palestine and Iran, and Biden demonizing Russia and China. And they're starting to create this. The Warhawks are starting to create this new 21st century axis of evil, being North Korea, China, Russia, and Iran. And they're drumming the warhammer to begin this new war, so to speak. I don't know. Do you have anything to add to that, Lupiter, or I see Adam's kind of doing his thing.
What I want to say is look, nothing against economics, nothing against supply and demand, nothing against Austrian economics or any other brand of economics. But I think if we want to understand the economy, and I agree with what you're saying about, we're in this type of era now, and there's speculation about what type of era we're going into. But I think the way to understand it, a way that's more practical, a way that's more pragmatic, a way that's more relatable for the average person, is to break it down like a TV show, like a sitcom, into a bunch of seasons, into a bunch of eras. And at each of these seasons, we have a driving force, something that drives the economy for that season, right? The plot twist or the narrative of that season. So, if we were to go back to the early 1900s, we had the Great Depression, and that was sort of a very depressed economic time. But then after that, we had the war spending, we had the war era, we had the war season. We had World War I, we had World War II. We got pulled out of the depression in the First World War, brought back in after World War I, after the defense spending dried up, back out of it again in World War II. After World War II, the economy was driven by, and this entered into, say, the second or third season, the economy was driven by boomers. And it was, a very long season where boomers and demographic change, population growth drove the economy. And then that sort of started to taper out in the 70s. And that's when they started doing immigration. They started doing globalism. They started doing outsourcing. In the 90s, we had trade with China. In the early 2000s, we entered into a new bubble. The late 90s, the early 2000s, the tech bubble. In between, and then the tech bubble crashed. That was the first tech bubble. Then we had another season where we had the real estate market, at least in America. I'm speaking mainly about America here. Of course, other countries, they'll have different seasons. And then after this real estate bubble peaked in 2008, we're back on the tech train. Now the tech train's drying up. We're looking at other things. What can we do to fuel our economy? What's the next season? What's this season going to look like? People are saying oil, energy, supplies to Europe, outsourcing things from Europe, looting looting America's vassals, maybe Cold War spending. Who knows? But I think for each period of time, there's a season, there's an era, and there's something that drives the economy, and that's what I hope we're going to talk about today.
Just very quickly, narratives and seasonality are legitimate economic analyses. They exist, they impact things, and it's not just abstraction. That's technically how things go.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is during times of conflict, generally we see some type of new innovation occur as a result, because countries are starting to pull their resources together to create the new thing, so to speak. And that new thing being, in World War II, we saw the atomic age, with the atomic bomb, with the Manhattan Project. And World War I, we saw France with the tank, which revolutionized the battlefield, in trench warfare. So, I mean, what do you guys think because we're, obviously the topic today is about the digital age, and I believe coming to the end, possibly being replaced by AI, who knows? But what do you guys think the new innovation will be, the new tech for this new upcoming third World War III scenario?
AI.
That's the one thing that they're trying to push, the one thing that they're talking about. You've got restrictions on AI technology going into China. This is the thing. This is where all the money in the economy is going. It's going into the AI sector. It's going into AI graphics cards. It's going into AI startups. If you want to do an IPO, you want to do a startup, you want to get VC funding. If you don't put AI, even if you're releasing a consumer product, you want to sell shoes. If you don't put AI somewhere in the product description, you're not selling it.
Yeah, that's kind of the new thing, I guess, so to speak, is the AI. I honestly think that the AI is nowhere near what they, I guess, like Elon Musk is talking about AI. That it's nowhere near the level that people are thinking, like not necessarily Star Wars, but like Terminator 2 or Terminator 1 type, Skynet. I don't think it's at that level yet, because it still requires manual input, and I think we're far from that, because like I said, I work in autonomous learning and languages, and what I've seen in my side, and I'm like probably in the leading experts in the field, we're not there. I'm maybe 50 years away, because they're just not investing in that technology. Think about my situation. Like, nobody's called me from the government. No one's called me from like these, like MIT or these big think tanks with AI, and like, hey, we need someone to program the language, and we need someone to help develop the autonomous learning with these machines or this AI. And I haven't been contacted. It's a lot of startups. It's a lot of like, low level, low management, college kids right out of college, just getting, working out of a garage. However, I did say in the past in previous podcasts that innovation is dictated from a garage. It's not dictated from, some big company startup like Microsoft or like Boeing or like Apple or any of this. Innovations usually comes about and like, yeah, it comes out of a garage, like Apple Computer with the home brew club in San Francisco or I guess Simi Valley during the 70s and 60s. That's where it comes from.
I don't think you can say that we're 50 years away from anything in AI. I think I think some of the advances have been phenomenal. Some of them have been expected. I don't think even 2-3 years ago, if you would have shown, especially some of the higher end stuff in AI that most people aren't familiar with, it would have blown people's mind. They say, I can't believe this, fair enough, I know this would be possible, but I thought this would have been 10 years away. You're telling me this is 2 years away. Phenomenal. So, like, when it comes to Terminator, I don't know the exact terminology. Perhaps you do. My understanding is there's something called AGI, which is I'm not sure, autonomous general intelligence, perhaps. And then there's this something known as the singularity. And at that point, the singularity, that's the point where the AI is more intelligent than us, or the AI has the ability to engineer and improve itself and optimize itself without us. So that's autonomous general intelligence, perhaps. And I agree with far off from AGI or the singularity or whatever the exact terminology is. But I can't say whether that's 50 years away, 30 years away, 100 years away, or 7 years away, especially with the rate of breakthroughs. So it is genuine. Like what Musk and others say is that this is going to happen. It will be huge, transformative, hugely impactful. We need to prepare for it, and we need to be kept cautious. And then, of course, the startups and people, they say they make the things, and it goes regardless. And it's you gotta try, and the governments try and catch up to regulate it, and then they're also fighting cyber wars and competition, and it's a lot. It's certainly the narrative of our time, I would put forward.
Yeah, I just brought up a article from Bloomberg about OpenAI scale rankings progress towards human level problem solving, and in this article, like I said, they're talking about the company believes its technology is approaching the second level of 5 on the path to artificial general intelligence, as you were talking about. Yeah, so it basically comes down to, I guess, 5 levels of of artificial intelligence in the regards.
And I could only imagine that each level is exponentially harder to get to.
Yeah, of course.
So if we're at level 2, what's that? Maybe 2%, maybe 5% of the way. It sounds like a lot, like 2 out of 5. That's 40%. We're 40%. No, we're probably 1 or 2%. And if you look at their models, I can't remember what they're called. They're like neurolinguistic models, but they're not going to get general intelligence out of neurolinguistic models. They're just reshuffling information. But if you look at ChatGPT 3 versus ChatGPT 4, they needed to use 7 times the amount of resources to get from ChatGPT 3 to ChatGPT 4. In fact, it might have even been more. It might have even been like 12 times. And I calculated once how much they would need to get to like ChatGPT 6. And the problem is that it's like exponential, right? Because you're multiplying it by itself, and then you're multiplying it again. So to go up each level of even just ChatGPT like sort of performance, it uses exponentially more resources, and the cost of these resources, or the cost of providing the services, is very, very strongly correlated to the amount of resources like computing resources that are required, and the rate of increase of computing resources required to use these models, it's growing at a rate that's faster than the computing resources are being created, right? It's growing at a rate faster than we're able to improve the technology that we use to make these computing resources. So the cost of AI is increasing, and it's increasing quite a lot as we make more and more advanced models. Now, there's things that companies are doing, like NVIDIA right now. Their AI hardware just uses basically graphics cards. It's not as simple as that. They've kind of made some custom stuff, but it's basically they've repackaged their video game cards or their cards that they use to do 3D rendering for Pixar and animated movies, CGI, and things like that. And what they've done is they've made a special version of that that's designed to do AI, but it's still using technology that existed like 20 years ago. The only reason why they're able to do this now is because 20 years ago, the technology, your graphics card 20 years ago had like 1% of the power or less of what the graphics card today has, right? Because computers get stronger and they double in performance every so many years. But they're looking right now at new ways of, running these AI models, new hardware that's going to be built not based on designs where 20 years ago, but based on modern designs tailored specifically for the workload of AI, for these types of AI models. And that's going to significantly increase the performance of the hardware. It's going to make it much cheaper to run these models. But that might just get us, say, from ChatGPT 4, where we're at right now, to say ChatGPT 5 with a similar cost. You see what I'm saying? Well, then you can go from ChatGPT 5 to ChatGPT 6. That's going to cost a lot more money. So, it's not clear how we're going to get to, say, ChatGPT 7. And ChatGPT 6, I don't think ChatGPT 6 or ChatGPT 7 will be anywhere near the next rank of these, like, 5 ranks of AI. In fact, I don't even know with the neuro-linguistic models that we have, can we get to level 3? So I think people need to be realistic about, what we're going to do with this AI. It's not going to be to replace humans. It's going to replace some human labor and stuff like that. But you're going to have to train the model, and it's only going to be able to do basic things.
Yeah, like I said, I haven't been contacted, and that's what I do. That's my expertise in training and autonomous training, and nobody's even contacted me. I've published articles on it, on autonomous learning, and I don't know anybody in the AI industry. I have a lot of friends in robotics and AI, and they're everybody's pretty much at the same level. And the main thing, though, too, is like I'm on the linguistical side, like you were talking about. But one of the main things, though, that AI is going to require is a lot of energy. And speaking of energy, we're not even at a type 1 type civilization on the Kardashev scale. I don't know if you've heard of that before. I'm going to pull it up on Wikipedia and explain it for those that aren't familiar with it. But basically, the Kardashev scale is it's a scale that was invented by a Soviet scientist. Basically or explaining the energy needs of different types of civilization. He broke it down into type 1, type 2, type 3, and I believe type 4 civilization as it's shown here. And basically, a type 1 civilization uses the energy available of its planetorial resources, and we haven't even reached that as a civilization, basically. So I mean, in order to even have any chance of getting any further in AI, I think it require a lot of energy and computing, because, like I said, these computers, they use a lot of energy, and especially with the Green New Deal and the woke narrative of climate change, and we need to go back to we need to stop our energy usage because it's polluting the planet and causing premature global warming. We're not going to get anywhere near to a type 1 civilization anytime soon. And that's what I mean by, I think AI is far away, because I think we're being pushed further and further away from this type 1 type energy capacity as a type 1 civilization. I do believe, and I've said it before in the Telegram channel, the links in the description, as well as on the podcast, that basically the first country that comes up with fusion power will be the leading country or leading empire in AI technology and innovation. And right now, it's the countries that are working on it. I think United States, Russia, France, and I don't know if there's another one. Any other countries that are really working in fusion power. But I know that Russia, France, and the U.S. are right now the leading countries in it, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know. Would you guys have to add anything else on that, Adam?
No, sounds good. I know Iran is very good at nuclear medicine, so if they've got nothing going on with fusion, surprising, but it's not something that I'm familiar with.
Okay.
I think the largest initiatives so far are the ITER. I think it's called ITER. That's a big European initiative. I think they use one of these like toroidal magnetic things to contain plasma or something. I'm not exactly sure how it works. But the idea is that if they just build it big enough, it's going to work and it's going to be feasible. I'm not sure how, if there's any validity in this, or if this is just one of these things they're doing to milk money, like the International Space Station. I mean, I'm not sure how much scientific accomplishment or achievement we've produced for the like $1 trillion we've spent on that. I'm not sure if that was good money well spent. I'm not sure if the $1 trillion we spent on climate change research has produced much of value anyway as well, because they've got no model that can actually predict the weather or predict climate or anything like that. But yeah, there's a bunch of initiatives. There's the National Ignition Facility in America. They're using lasers to ignite some pellets of some kind and force them to fuse together or something. They're doing all sorts of crazy stuff, but I don't know. I mean, I don't know how feasible this is. I mean, maybe fusion is always going to be 50 years away. Maybe fusion is 20 years away. Maybe we'll have fusion in the next decade. I don't know, but I mean, it always seems like unobtainium. So we'll see where this goes.
Yeah. I mean, the main thing, like I said, is innovation. It's not so much about the energy too. Energy, I think, is the primary concern for innovation in AI and computing power. The other thing that I think we discussed earlier, Lipiter, about PCs, because I bought my first Mac like this week, and I was concerned about the amount of power at the chip and processing power. And we were talking about how it hasn't really advanced that much in the last decade or so. I don't know. You had a lot more information than I did on it.
I mean, it kind of has advanced in the last decade. That the issue is that there was a period, like a whole decade, where basically, because there's two companies, there used to be a lot of companies that made computers, and then the industry got consolidated because it became very expensive to develop these products. So the market could only support so many people. Plus, the x86 won out, and that's a type of processor technology. And there were only two companies that could legally make x86, Intel and AMD. And so when Intel and AMD were going at it, there was a lot of competition. Intel's been dominant for a very long time. Eventually, AMD released like a really bad product. They had some bad products, like multiple bad products in a row, and they ran out of money. They couldn't do anything. They needed to get like investor capital, like capital injected by Arab billionaires and kings. They needed to get money from Wall Street. They needed to do all this stuff. They actually sold their headquarters. They liquidated large parts of their corporation, and they spent all of their last money developing new computer processors called Zen. It's the Zen microarchitecture with Jim Keller, who actually he designed the Apple chip, the Apple chip that you're using. Maybe not that specific one, but he helped them design the architecture for that chip. He designed the Tesla chips. He designed a lot of the x86 stuff. So this is a guy who is a major player in the semiconductor industry, and he designed a lot of the big chips. And they had to bring him back to head this project to actually fix their company. And they managed to turn their company around. And now AMD makes very good chips, and every year that they're making big improvements. And because AMD's back in the game, Intel is also forced to design new products. So for 10 years, Intel, all they did is they sat on their ass, and every year, they're able to make put more transistors on a wafer. And what they do is they take the wafer and they cut the wafer up into a number of chips. Instead of making chips with more transistors on, instead of making more powerful chips, instead of changing the architecture and spending money, all they did is make more chips per wafer. And they gave us the same product, literally the same product for 10 years, and they just laughed at us. Now we have competition again, but it's too late, because what's happened for Intel is Intel was making so much money, everyone else was looking at how much money Intel made. So you got other people coming into the market. You have companies like Qualcomm, Snapdragon, all these things. They use ARM microprocessor technology. That's what's in your phones. But now you're starting to see ARM processors entering into the server industry. You're starting to see ARM laptops. They just released one the other day. So Intel's in a very bad situation right now, because even their major clients, like Apple was one of their major clients, they had maybe 20% of their revenue or something came from Apple. And Apple's looking at this. Intel was releasing the same product every year for 10 years. They would give Apple the same product, and the price would go up, and the cost to make the product for Intel would go down. And Apple's looking at this. Apple's not dumb. They're a big company. They've got resources. They're smart. And they said, hey, if we make our own processors, we can save billions and billions and billions of dollars every year. Well, guess what? Google also consumes a double-digit percentage of Intel's products, Intel's processors. Amazon and their data centers, they consume huge amounts of Intel products. So all of these companies that consume all of this billions, tens of billions of dollars worth of Intel products, they've decided that they're going to make their own processors right now, because if they can make processors and save money and get a similar product for less cost, and then pass those savings on or to their customers, or keep that margin for themselves, they're not stupid. They're going to do that.
Yeah, exactly. It's all about supply, demand, and then ROI. That's what it comes to at the end of the day. Yeah. So I mean, the thing is there's going to be a stagnant of technological advances and innovation, and that's because education has been declining for many years in the West. Especially with the DEI and the wokeism on college campuses. They've been defunding a lot of STEM programs and pushing. The other thing is there's less and less men attending colleges in the West than in the 1950s. And because of this, you're getting less. Most STEM programs are predominantly men and foreigners from Asia and Central Asia. So less. There's a news story I read the other day where a lot of there was less East Asian and Central Asians coming to study in the United States for technology, and this correlates with the deficit in males attending university study. So I mean, for instance, Mexico graduated more engineers last year than the United States. I've said this before many times, and this has been said by other people as well. So I mean, you could see that there's a decline in the West as far as creating engineers, software engineers, technology majors, and STEM. And it comes down to the simple fact that this Green New Deal, less investment in energy, tech jobs being sent overseas, and of course what the topic is today, eventually the digital bust, the tech bubble that's coming, as we saw with massive layoffs recently in this year. That was highlighted by several different influencers and podcasters, as well as in mainstream media. I think this is the tip of the iceberg, and I've said it many times over the last year, and the Telegram channel, that I think that there's going to be, you may see tech companies go out of business, like bankrupting, and not just some startup, but like well-established companies. You could possibly see like Meta go full bankrupt. You could see Tesla go bankrupt because of the lack of consumer spending and failed business ventures. So I mean, these are things to really consider. As a national security issue in the West, but also as a as global trade and the future of technology as a whole and innovation.
And I want to add to that just quickly that there is a limit. Like what Professor Redpill's saying is correct, that there is a limit on what we can do with computers. Like people right now, they're of the mindset that, throughout their life, computers have always gotten better, except for this 10-year period where nothing really happened. But generally, computers, in most people's lifetimes, there's a lot of people alive today, and their first computer didn't even have color. It was black and white, or green and black, or something like that, right? So there's a lot of people that have seen, even younger people, they've seen a lot of improvement just from smartphones. Even though that's kind of petering out right now, but there is a limit to how powerful we can make these processors and how cheap we can make these processors, and we're approaching that limit. That's why right now we're on EUV. EUV is a technology by TSML, and they make the machines that make the computer processors. And these machines cost hundreds of millions of dollars now. It's insane. You go back a few years, they used to be able to use DUV machines. They could buy them for millions of dollars. Now they have to spend hundreds of millions of dollars. But EUV machines use ultraviolet light, but you can only manufacture transistors so small with ultraviolet light. So, in order to go further than that, they need to start doing crazy things like using X-ray. And they're even talking about using particle accelerators like the CERN particle accelerator. But you can imagine, how much money it's going to cost to do that. I mean, they're talking about building a new semiconductor factory in America, and it's going to cost like $100 billion, right? So, it's just becoming exponentially more expensive to make more powerful computer processors. And until recently and up to now, and probably even for a few more years, we can still make more powerful processors, and we can make more powerful processors per dollar that we spend, right? So maybe the cost of the processor will be a little bit more, like 10% more, but it'll be like 20, 30, 50, 60, whatever percent faster, so we can still do that. But eventually, we're not going to be able to make more powerful processors for per dollar. And so if we want every extra percentage of performance, that's going to cost us 1% more money. And that will be when we've reached the limit of computing. And from then on, it's just purely about how much money you have to spend it, on doing whatever sort of computing problem you're trying to solve.
Exactly. I mean, the thing is, I brought up an article here, like I was talking about Tesla. I think this was a Barron's. This is the article you sent me. And basically they're talking about that Tesla's either going to be the biggest company in the world or it's going to collapse in the next few years. And there's a YouTube influencer that covers everything about Elon Musk and SpaceX and all of that. And the different he broke down like all the promises that Musk has made in regards to SpaceX and Tesla and his other companies, and has failed every time. He talked about like AI and about that he's gonna have man missions to the moon and to Mars within 2030, and it's just he keeps pushing these goalposts on and on, especially with Tesla. I believe, what did he say? He said that the truck was going to be basically, what did he say? The truck was going to be ready in like 2020 or something like that, or 2021, and then it got pushed out, and then finally got released this year, and it's been a disaster. I do believe he did a live event where some guy threw a lead ball or a metal ball at the Tesla window, and it like shattered it completely. Yeah, go ahead, madam.
Yeah, about the shattering the Cybertruck demo. Just about this in particular, he claimed that what they were doing was stupid, and they were testing that window before they showcased it at the event, and so they were just like throwing stuff at it, causing likely micro fractures. So when they threw the ball at the event, it finally broke through and damaged the bulletproof, allegedly, or highly strongly impact resistant glass. So it's a bit stupid to have been testing the glass like that before the events, but I've seen that it, I'm not going to say that oops happens all the time. I remember Apple, they do a demo, they get a tablet and they show something, and they're like, look how fast it is, and then like they go on the browser and it's just not loading. They're like, oh, and they switch it out and get another one. These things happen all the time at sales events when you're demonstrating the prototype, especially of a new product. I think it's important not to idolize Elon Musk, not to worship him. He's highly intelligent. He's a salesperson. He's a swamp creature. But when he says, "Oh, here's all the great things my business is going to do. Please invest in me," it's all sales. You can't get caught up on the sales. It's my perspective.
Yeah.
I believe that. I believe that they would be doing that. But what I want to add quickly is I also want to note that after they broke the first window, he wasn't like, "Oh, that's the window we threw this at that window 100 times before the show. Like that one doesn't count. That one was already damaged from the previous 100 times. Try the next window." Like he didn't do that. He didn't go on to the next window. So how much confidence did he really have in the strength and durability of his product?
I've also seen a CEO of a bulletproof glass window company sitting in some truck that they added their bulletproof window in. He's here, and they had a sniper shoot here, and he's so it shouldn't necessarily, if it went through, it probably shouldn't kill him, but it's still pretty scary sitting in a truck being shot at with a 50 caliber sniper. And he did that, and it didn't go through, and he's just sitting there like, okay, he hardly flinched. So if Elon Musk can't get the best bulletproof glass for his Tesla Cybertruck, like is he a military contractor? Yes. Is he a military contractor renowned for bulletproof glass? I don't know. Again, like I find that the Cybertruck, I don't really care too much about it, but in my opinion, it's just a huge meme. I haven't seen any of them here in Europe. I've seen lots of Teslas, and some of the Teslas look quite nice. Sometimes they can function well in urban environments. I wouldn't purchase one.
Yeah. I mean, the other fiasco with the Tesla souffle, the trunk lid that cuts your carrots and tomatoes for your salads. That wasn't a really good idea either. I don't know if you saw that yet.
I think I want to add before we go on to a different topic. What Tesla is Tesla isn't a car company. Like people think Tesla is a car company, but if Tesla is a car company, how can Tesla be priced as being worth more than not just every other car company in the world, every truck company in the world, every company that manufactures diggers, excavators, cranes, anything else, construction or transportation associated, such as planes, helicopters? They're not a truck company. They're not priced like a car company. They're priced like a tech company. They're priced like a tech bubble. And that goes back to what Professor Redpool was saying before about how Tesla and how we're in an era right now of the IT Gilded Age, the tech Gilded Age. We're in an economic era of, it's like the second .com bubble. We have companies like Tesla that are valued at, I think it's valued at more than the entire Canadian stock market, than every company in Canada. We have companies like NVIDIA that are valued at more than every other company in the IT or the silicon semiconductor industry. We have, these companies have insane valuations. They are valued at insane levels, and this is not sustainable. Like, in order for Tesla to justify its market cap, not only would they have to do robot taxis, that would be the only way that you could justify this, but they would have to have like the majority of the world's like robo-taxi industry, right? They'd have to replace most people that do Uber, most people that drive cars with robo-taxis. And there's no reason to believe that Tesla would be so dominant in this industry when you look at companies like BYD that outsell Tesla. You look at other companies that make cars that have self-driving technology. Why can't Mercedes also compete in this industry? They also make self-driving cars. Well, supposedly they're going to make self-driving cars if we ever get that in the future. So there's every car company's doing this. There's nothing really special about Tesla, but everyone has a fascination about Tesla, not as a car company, but as a tech company.
So the model there, the pricing model, is to do with it being a data company rather than tech. It's data, and it being data centric. So you're not investing just in the Tesla products. The Tesla products are the applications for the Tesla data models, and it's the data models that you're really interested in, and it's the heart of the Tesla business. So it's the Tesla AI self-driving, the Tesla company human capital, the Tesla company subsidies, and links to the US government. Those are kind of what feed in the valuation. Of course, these stock prices are not intrinsic. They are at this level, and in general, in today's world, all largely speculation. So you're not saying this is how much it's worth today. Nvidia, no one believes Nvidia should be, worth 30 times more than it is last year or whatever. But that's the nature of speculation, especially when it keeps going up and up and up and up and up, and there's no reason to think it's going to go down. It's going to keep going up, so you should keep buying in until a time when it should pop. There's a parabolic rise, and then there's a correction. We saw this with Tesla at $800 something. We see this constantly in all sorts of cycles. There are all these kind of micro cycles, and they kind of all contribute to a macro cycle. But the issue is when you're at these massive caps, we're all kind of waiting. Is there going to be some big macro event that's going to cause the correction, kind of compel the correction?
It's a Ponzi scheme. There's fundamentally nothing. There's nothing fundamentally that underwrites any of these companies' valuations, with the exception of Nvidia having currently right now a very large amount of revenue that they're getting from AI. Some people are saying it may be a bubble. I don't know whether or not it's a bubble. This AI stuff consumes a lot of resources. I think there's practical uses for it. I think the demand for AI chips will be there in the future, but we do see that everyone's starting to enter into this industry, because right now Nvidia makes chips and they make like a 95% margin or something on these AI chips. And you've got to understand, they're selling these AI chips in cards, and they're selling some of these cards for like $15,000, $30,000. Like, these are the price of some cars, and they're making like 95% margins on this. So Huawei's entering into this industry, Samsung's entering into this industry. There are so many people. Yes. And this is ridiculous. How can Nvidia be worth more than all of these other companies? Like, I looked at the share price or the market cap of Samsung. Yeah, but the underlying profit, it's based on the assumption that they can go forward into the future and continue to make 95% gross margins on their products. But they're not the only people that has the ability legally, with intellectual property and things like that, with technical capability of their development teams, with the resources to actually make these.
Ignoring intellectual property doesn't really matter. First off, when you say it's a Ponzi scheme, it's not Nvidia that's a Ponzi scheme. It's the money system, the fiat money printing. QE Infinity, that's the Ponzi scheme, the US dollar, and everything it touches. So the financial markets are the Ponzi scheme because they keep printing money. It's not a fixed supply. That's why the markets keep going up, and that's why we see insane valuations, because it's not linked to anything. They just keep the money printer going, and so the printed money can go and inflate these assets, and that's the point of quantitative easing.
I would stay out of any company that makes massive windfall profits, because it's very hard for me as someone in finance to discount the cash flow for that and figure out how much extra we should pay for the share price of that company based on this windfall profit. And this also assumes that you can know how long this windfall profit's going to last for. I mean, getting this right would be extremely difficult to calculate. But right now you've got other companies entering into this space, and people aren't going to be like, the price of these products and the cost structure is not going to be such going forward into the future where you're able to make 95% margins. You can't have one tech company make 95% margins and everyone else is making like, it's not a fair comparison because it's like gross versus net. But if the average net margins are like 5, 10, 20%, across Silicon Valley, right? And NVIDIA is making like 50, 60% net margins. This is not sustainable. It's unless there's barriers to entry that stop other people making this, especially when it's such a large market. Like, I could see there could be some parts of tech or electronics where you could make 50, 60% net margins, but these would have to be areas where, the market's really not big enough to support multiple competitors, or where they have some sort of intellectual property, or they've got some sort of exclusive contracts with government or companies. So there'd have to be something there to justify that. But going forward, I mean, there's no way that NVIDIA can sustain this level of profitability based on the combination of these margins and this market share of the AI industry, because
I think it may be useful to just outline the economic theory of competition and monopoly. So what you've mentioned consistently is NVIDIA is a monopoly. They have monopoly power, meaning they can set price, and they're earning supernormal profits. Now, supernormal profits can only be obtained by a monopoly, and that monopoly can only be sustained through dynamic innovation and efficiency, or government monopoly. That's the only two ways that monopoly may exist in the future. What happens is, standard theory of competition, you have supernormal profit. Firms that use monopoly power, they generate supernormal profit. This incentivizes new entrants into the market to compete away the market share of the monopolist, bringing the market into a more competitive environment. More suppliers enter, demand, ceteris paribus, demand just is. You're going to see lower costs, right? So, for example, if there are 7 different alternatives to NVIDIA, they can't charge a 95% margin, even if they're the best products, because people say, I'd rather get a slightly worse product and pay 5 times less. So the more entrants come into the market, the lower the cost, or the lower the price level in the system, the less supernormal profit, and it's going to go towards a more normal level or a competitive level. So supernormal profit, it encourages new entrants into the market. So the monopolist is incentivized to invest that profit. If they don't invest that profit, new people come in, they get outcompeted. So what NVIDIA should be doing, and I'm sure they are, is investing heavily into research and development. Research and development means that the company remains on top, efficient, innovative, etc., is able to retain that monopoly power. You're correct. There are windfall profits. What are the barriers to entry when it comes to this industry? I'd say 2 main barriers to entry is going to be that investment cost. I don't know what it takes to produce these, but I'm sure it's immense. We talked about, there was I think it was Sam Altman said, I'm going to build this superconductor factory in Texas. I need $100 billion or $1 trillion or $5 trillion for that. Those are huge. If that's what it takes to make these processors, then it's going to be very difficult to get the capital together to invest and make the factories. And the second barrier is going to be government monopolies. If you need the government's permission to do things, and the government doesn't give out the licenses and the monopolies, how many trillions? $7 trillion. Hey, I want to build a new chip making factory here in America, in the West, whatever. They're all being made in Taiwan. I'm going to need $7 trillion. I think he'd struggle to raise $2 trillion. I don't know how successful he's been there, but that's immense, enormous. If that's the barriers to entry, then it remains a less competitive industry. There are supernormal profits, but as you say, we're talking about conflict and war and enormous profits that are affecting all the companies, the entire world economy. You can bet that we know that China is investing in these resources, that America is investing in these resources. Europe, who knows what they're up to? Russia, China, I'm sure Iran, like all these, you've got these world powers and a multipolarity of these world powers that India tech that are pushing to try and take that money, because this is, if we're saying that the seasonality right now is digital and artificial intelligence, and we need these processors, and these processors are the thing, and Nvidia allegedly empirically make the best processors, then it makes sense that they are worth a fortune, because it's their processors that are fueling, that are the engine driver for all of it. It's like if they had a monopoly on steam engines when trains were invented, it doesn't matter who's making trains. You can make 7 models of trains, but if they're the only ones having the best and most efficient steam engines, I'd rather invest in the one making the steam engines. Same thing with Nvidia, with the processors.
And that's what NVIDIA is doing right now. They're actually following that strategy. I'm not sure how effective it's going to be, though. There's a lot of people saying that it's going to be very effective. But in my opinion, we're dealing with such large sums of money. It doesn't matter like what the software ecosystem is and how easy they make it for other companies to use their software ecosystem together with the hardware. Because if you're spending $10 billion, $20 billion a year on hardware, and the difference is, well, I already use this software, so it's easier for me to continue buying this hardware, but I can buy the hardware at a 95% margin, or I can buy the same hardware and just make my own software, make it work, make my own ecosystem, or use another ecosystem. And I can buy hardware that's maybe being sold at a 20% margin or something like that. I mean, the company that buys it at a 20% margin, they're going to have a huge comparative advantage for their AI products and their AI services over the company that has to give NVIDIA a 95% margin. I would like if you could, Professor Red Pill, if you could bring up the article about Samsung and Samsung appointing a new person to develop their AI products. You're muted right now, Professor.
Yeah, I know. I'm here. I'm sorry. I'm looking it up. Sorry. Yeah. Is this what you're talking about here?
I don't know if that's it. There was one where they were talking about how Samsung appointed a new director in charge of their AI hardware products, because what Samsung's doing now is Samsung is entering into hardware. They're entering into AI hardware. And what Adam was talking about is valid things about intellectual property and things like that. It's very hard to prevent people from making hardware. It's very hard to prevent them from making processors, because at the end of the day, all these processors are a bunch of transistors, and it's very hard to stop people making transistors. There is a lot of protections.
Is it not difficult for them to, don't they need highly precise machines that are making them on what is the difficulty here in making the hardware? Because it's not like you can just write code. You need the robots.
Making this is extremely hard. You need hundreds of billions of dollars to make them. But this is why no one makes their own stuff. The only company that makes their own stuff now is Intel. Everyone else uses other companies like that they use Global Foundries, they use TSMC and Samsung. And this is what I want to say. So Samsung, right now, I don't know if you want to go over this article, Professor Redpill, if you want to introduce people to it.
Yeah. Samsung names new chip unit head as AI race heats up. Let me get the bigger article for you guys. They name a new chip unit head as AI race heats up. Memory expert Yong, I'm not gonna pronounce that. Jong Yong Hein taped AM Amid HBM battle with SK Hynix. SK, is that that's another Korean company, I believe, right?
Mm-hmm.
They deal with data and like Wi-Fi's and things of that nature. Technology.
They make the memory, the RAM in your
That's right. That's right.
computers.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. So Samsung Electronics has replaced the head of its semiconductor division as competition and developing artificial intelligence chips heats up. Vice chairman, of course, Young, whatever, I can't pronounce his name, I'm sorry, has been appointed as chief of Samsung's device solutions division, a surprise move that the company announced on Tuesday. The device solutions division is in charge of the company's memory system and foundry semiconductors business. Yeah, interesting.
And these guys have their own. They have their own foundries that make semiconductors, that make processors that other people go to have their stuff made. And they've had customers like Apple. They've had customers like NVIDIA. In fact, right now, one of the key components for these AI processors, it's one of the main things that constrains supply. In fact, it's the main thing right now that limits supply. If you want to get a NVIDIA AI card right now, there's like a 6-month wait list or something crazy. And that's because the memory that's on these devices is not produced in quantities sufficient to meet demand. But not only does Samsung make processors and have foundries to make processors, they also make the memory for the AI cards. So Samsung's actually a bigger company than NVIDIA. They make they're able to make all this stuff. They design this stuff themselves. They have their own processors. They have them in millions and millions of phones all around the world. They make laptops. They make tanks. They make ships. They make everything. They make planes. They make weapons for the military. They make all sorts of things. They make kitchen appliances. They build houses. They build highways. So if you want to compare Samsung has less revenue. They have a smaller market cap, but Samsung is an infinitely larger company to NVIDIA. So, and NVIDIA has to go to them to get the parts they need to make their chips. So if Samsung has the option of supplying themselves first or supplying this guy that's making 95% margins, then they're going to go and supply themselves first.
Interesting. So I'm looking through here, and here's the supervised. This is like where I'm at, like my expertise with supervised learning, supervisor algorithm processing, model training, input data, output, and this is in machines to learn. They got power of neurons, artificial neuron network, AI, big data. They're working on power to do more, compute, nudes, file server, shared disk, rise of on-device AI. So they're working a lot of different technologies. Let's go to the applications. So AI on mobile devices. They've got innovation. So data centers, hyperconnections, metaverse are the major platforms that are continuously shaping our lives, the age of digital transformation. I mean, like I said, it's a huge gamble, a huge risk at this point.
I think it's inevitable. I think it's a certainty. I mean, this is what I was talking about in 2020.
It's obviously the tech. Like I said, when I introduced this particular topic, like I said, I was talking about innovation with like, World War III or this 100-year cycle. This is obviously dawn of a new age. So we entered the atomic age in the 20th century, post World War II, and now we're entering the AI digital age as the fourth industrial revolution. And
digital age, I think. AI is a function.
Yeah, the function of the digital age, but AI is going to be the basically the driving force. And unfortunately, like I said, I don't think there's enough right now. It's private sector that's investing in it, and generally, innovation doesn't really take off unless you have government investing in it. So unless the government is heavily investing in it, like with the atomic age, I don't know. This is my expertise and what I've studied and researched, that basically innovation is funded by government, and then private sector takes it over and they fine tune it and they find a commercial use for it. and the private sector with consumer use. And that's like Apple. That's like the internet. The internet was designed during the Cold War. It was originally intended to basically, it was eventually used to communicate between government agencies, universities in case of an atomic fallout or atomic war. And it became what it is today. I mean, we're using the internet now, with the social media and podcasting. And then it grew into the personal computer with Apple, Microsoft, and so on. Because before Microsoft and Apple, it was primarily business machines, and the only people that were into PCs and technology were like basically hobbyists. Like I said, the homebrew club that I mentioned before. So I mean, the new technology, AI, is right now it's primarily being used by Zoomers and novice and people that are using it for. I mean, it's probably used so much for commercial, but right now it seems like hobbyists are kind of using it, and they're trying to find where it fits in the consumer realm, how useful it would be to the consumer, and that comes back to the social, the social communications loop. Where with the designers and the consumer, how the consumer is using the product and what its application is in the marketplace. But right now, I think AI is primarily, it's going to have to be driven by military and by government in order to make it past, where it's at right now. And go ahead.
It also depends on both what your expectations are for it, and
Right.
secondly on what your requirements are, what you're trying to do, because then this is going to change the answer of, can you use AI, or will AI do what you want it to do or what you expect it to do?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, like I said, if it has a military application, that's when government's going to apply it. So, like, we know with NASA, with the Apollo moon missions, that was a military investment. That was a government investment to the Cold War. That was, the atomic bomb, and nuclear power, and the consumer use of it today. That was military. That was pushing it to create a new bomb or a new weapon. And it was funded heavily by the government. I mean, 1% of the nation of the U.S.'s GDP was spent on developing a nuclear weapon. So that's what it took. I don't know exactly what the NASA moon mission was. I don't know what percentage GDP, but I think it was pretty high as well. They invested a lot of time, a lot of effort. Some of the top scientists in the United States and the world, for that matter. I mean, Project Paperclip, they brought a lot of the ex-German scientists and rocket scientists to the United States to help develop that program. I mean, basically, you could have just called it the German Space Force, at the time, because most of the scientists working in NASA at the time were from Germany that came over, and the same in Russia as well. So, I mean, like I said, the only way to really drive AI to the level that they're wanting, that they're anticipating, it's going to have a military application, and it's going to be funded heavily by governments. If it's not Russia or Iran or whatever. Go ahead.
I think there's a lot you can do with it. I mean, I've seen some applications where, and this is like some sort of open source stuff that I think if you use commercially, you have to pay licenses for. But it's one of these main software programs that you use if you've got a bunch of different cameras and you're trying to monitor them. It's one of the main sort of ones that people at home can do. And you can get what's called a Coral AI card, which is it's like a $15-20 US card that plugs into an NVMe slot, which is like a PCIe like times like one slot. It's like a very basic slot, and this is a very low cost device. And with this device, you can monitor up to 15 cameras or more. And what you can do with this, with the AI model, is you're able to upload a bunch of pictures, say, of your employees, and then when someone comes into a certain area, it can trigger the AI model to run, and it will then compare the face of that person to the face of in your database and see if it matches the database, and then it will tag that person in a database as being at that location, and then it will create like an event log. So then you can see, okay, give me all of the instances where Adam Maxwell or Professor Red Pill was in the facility. Give me all the instances where they were in the lobby. things like this. And not only that, but then you can tie that into other systems. So, you know, this requires a lot of programming. It's a very manual process, but you can do things like, as an alternative or as an addition to security card systems, you can say, okay, unlock this door. This person has access to these regions you see in the building. So if you've got electronic lock systems, you can then allow them to enter into these sorts of areas. You can program it to do all sorts of things. So then you're able to, I mean, this requires a lot of work. There's no turnkey system. It's kind of like implementing any system in the business. It requires huge amounts of money. But in theory, maybe if you've got 20 or 50 security guards on a campus, maybe you could eliminate that down from 50 to say 20. You see what I'm saying?
I mean,
because there is.
I worked in security before for Microsoft, one of their offsites, and we had a site supervisor, and then generally 2 security guards for the entire facility. And we had the smart cages, all the stuff that you're talking about with, we had all of this stuff, everything that you just discussed.
Wow.
Yeah, we already had that. And that was back in 2005. So that was literally 20 years ago, Microsoft had. So
that would have been so expensive when they implemented it.
Yeah, I mean, like, it is what it is. Like, it's so expensive and so high tech at the time. I had to sign an NDA, so I can't really talk too much about it. But yeah, it was the stuff was like space age stuff. It was like the level of security we were using was similar to like what you see in CIA or like high tech or high level security buildings. So like we monitored everything. We know exactly where you are, when you're what part of the office you're in. They had smart lights, everything. Lights would come on when you enter the room. They would shut off when you're not in there. Like literally, I had to, if I was entering, rooms were unlocked where we were at some places. So in order to go in there, I had to take my key fob and just hit it that I was in the room at that certain time. So in case something was missing or whatever, we could figure out who was there, what was going on. So like the cages had fingerprint analysis, all that stuff. They had everything. And eye retinal stuff, all that shit. So like it was way advanced. That was 20 years ago. So the stuff they have today is more advanced, I'm sure, than that. And they are using a lot of AI. So like probably, yeah, you're right. We could have probably eliminated, instead of having a 2 or 3 man team with a site supervisor, we probably could have went to just one person. And that could have been done remotely. So not just one person on site, but literally one person in charge of like 5 remote sites or off sites, monitoring everything. And then they could have just a team, like a person just driving site to site in case there's an issue or something.
And I think there's a lot of applications like this where it's like, it's not going to replace everyone. It's going to replace some people. Like we were talking the other day, but one of the things in accounting is manual data entry. Now that's mostly gone now because of like modern accounting systems, ERP systems. Big companies have what's called OCR, so they'll manually train the computer system to recognize the invoices from each company, and then it will enter all the information. And there's all sorts of stuff like this coming online. So a lot of this stuff is already here, but we've not really seen the massive job losses that are going to come from business administration. And nowadays with modern electronic communication systems and electronic bookkeeping systems, customer relation management, enterprise resource planning systems, things like this, a lot of this stuff now uses standard formats like XRP. So they're able to recognize the data that the other systems, and there's only so many of these systems. So, if you have QuickBooks in America and then I have Xero, which is another international thing, it's based out of my country. If you send me a QuickBooks invoice, my Xero systems probably, if it doesn't recognize it, then there's an application I can get that will recognize it. So, that's not fully AI stuff. It's not necessarily something that's even coming. It's something that's already here. But I think, we see that industry takes a while to adapt. It takes a while to move forward. I mean, how long did it take after we got computers before every business in America had a computer? Instead of having like an abacus and like doing everything manually with paper. I mean, there's still businesses now that do things with paper. So I think, a lot of the stuff that the AI can do, it's already developed. It's already here. It's just going to take time before this stuff becomes mainstream, before we have the perfect implementation of it, before we have sales agents and people that can tailor these systems as needed to each business.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the thing is it all comes down to money and technology and innovation. And like I said, I think it's like I said, I think AI is a big gamble for a lot of these companies to invest in. Is it who's one of the largest investor in right now? Is it Apple, or is it Google, or is it is it
Well, it's Google, it's SoftBank. I think SoftBank owns a lot of shares in OpenAI, and
okay?
Microsoft licenses OpenAI for their
Uh-huh.
Bing AI. So it's a copy of OpenAI's technology. And then Google uses, they don't even have their own system. They use what's called Llama, which I think is developed from like Princeton University or something like this. So, they
Mhm.
designed all the mathematical equations or the base model for it or something. They take that and they made their own version of that. And they spent a lot of money. A lot of the cost of doing this is actually what's called training the model. So you have to feed the model billions of documents. You have to spend billions of dollars or hundreds of millions of dollars on hardware resources to train the AI model. Right now, Elon Musk is making his own version. It's called Grok, and he's just brought like billions of dollars worth of like AI cards. So
Oh,
it's
okay.
and then running it is a lot cheaper, and that's what we do as consumers. But I don't think we're going to get much better AI. I think the AI we've got is kind of as good as it's going to get in terms of like practical
I agree.
applications. And now it's like, what can we do with the technology we have at the level that it is at right now? And then anything 10 years, 20 years in the future will just be a little bit better, maybe a little bit cheaper to implement, but it will still be doing more or less the same things that it can do right now.
Yeah, I agree. Like I said, I think it's a huge gamble because, like, if this doesn't pay off and then there isn't an application for it, then they're going to have to, like I said, the shareholders are going to be like, well, we need to see profitability. And, I mean, that's the thing. Like with Tesla, for instance, they are not showing profitability. They've had 4 quarters now of negative. What is? I'll go pull the article up, but I believe they had 4 quarters of negative growth.
Personally, I found the jump from GPT-3 3.5 to GPT-4 to be quite significant. I think the intelligence capabilities were, I mean, it wasn't night and day, but it was considerable, considerably less frustrating with higher intelligence. And I've seen the benchmark data that affirms my personal experience there. And then I would say that as there are many use cases. I think many use cases we know. I mean, there are hundreds of AI startups and products and tools that are all largely in prototyping, proof of concept, or very, very, very early stages. And it's very exciting to see how they're going to their growth trajectories from prototype to seed or pre-seed seed, and having those as we're going to see greater integration of these products with our everyday life, like how Google search became, or how Uber became so transformative. From we had licensed taxis, and now Uber. Now you can call your phone and you can transport from one location to another. You don't even have to pay any cash. It's all done behind the scenes automatically via applied digital transformations or digital processes. You say there are loads of AI tools and applications and programs that are on the market now. I don't know half of them. I don't know most of them. I don't use any of them. They're all either esoteric at the moment, or behind such paywalls, or just otherwise inaccessible. So we're going to see a massive leap in accessibility of these AI products. Accessibility drives adoption, drives growth, drives transformation as we gain a greater capacity to exploit the tools that come with artificial intelligence.
Yeah, I think marketing's a great use case for AI. I think AI is going to wipe out most marketing jobs. I mean, yes, you're always going to need people that can edit photos, that do Photoshop, that do 3D modeling, that do CGI and things like that. But a lot of what it is like a lot of times most people in marketing, if they're doing anything in terms of digital media, and that's not the only thing people in marketing do, they do surveys, they do all sorts of stuff, consumer research, market research, competitive analysis. They will go and like figure out like how industries work and things like that. But in terms of the digital marketing, the digital media particularly, you can, for instance, take a picture of an object that you're trying to sell, like a toaster, a microwave, whatever, a pair of shoes. And, previously it was quite an expensive process. You needed to have a fairly skilled person to go and then use stock image and edit the stock images and, do your product placement and present your product and put on the website like 10 or whatever different photos of people in those shoes or that toaster oven or whatever in the kitchen or whatever it is you're trying to sell. Nowadays, you can do that with very few skills. You just go onto Midjourney, you give them a few dollars, and you just put some text queries into the chat. You upload the image of the product from maybe a couple of angles or something like that. It will spit all of that stuff out for you. In fact, even when it comes to making movies, making things like that, making adverts, normally what they do is they do something called storyboarding before they begin production. So they have to they get an idea of what the advert's going to look like, how long the advert's going to be, the so-called key shots that they need to make for each scene, the types of scenes and things like that. And then they kind of fill in the blanks as they're going, and they film it using this technique. Well, there's actually an AI product available right now where you can enter this information in, these keyframes in, and you can render sequences based on the keyframes. So you can do storyboarding by hand. You can do storyboarding in some sort of online or computer-based program. You get the image looking, or the environment, the models or whatever, looking how you want. You put that into the system, and then it will fill in the gaps. It will fill in the gaps, and it will create the scenes that you want based on those keyframes. And then, so you can do quite a lot right now already with this AI stuff.
I'm not a Luddite. I don't believe that AI is going to come and take all our jobs, and we're going to have to implement universal basic income in order to alleviate poverty. I think that's all socialist hogwash. The way I see it is that AI is an instrument, it's a tool, and you, the user or the programmer, need to be able to be equipped or better equipped to utilize those tools effectively. So it's like if you know how your parents Google search, and you get frustrated, you say, Dad, that's not how you're supposed to do it like this. I think that's kind of how these AI tools and instruments will be. As Professor Redpill said, rather than having 5 people, 2 people, 3 people, a team of people to do a job, if they have the tools of AI, one person's able to do it more efficiently, more effectively, and with greater, and perhaps even with greater results. AI is a tool, it's an instrument that we need to use, we the people, we as people, to achieve better results. One thing about AI is I still don't trust it autonomously, because you shouldn't trust it autonomously. Not only that, but as computers cannot be held accountable, they must not make management decisions because you can't hold it accountable. So when you say that it requires few skills to go and market the product, I would say there are still an enormous amount of skills. It's just they're more accessible, and which means it's easier for you, the individual, to know. You have to know, okay, here's the apps that I can use, here's what I need to go and do, here's the things I can do. And for example, there's one app, Leonardo AI, where you can go in, you can put your face, anyone's face, you can generate people in all sorts of different sections. And you can use that as a as a graphic storyboard. You can do that. You can get a whole set of 50 of them and create a short video using these steels. That's a lot of work, and I could never produce one of those frames, or maybe I could, but I'm not that good at drawing. I couldn't draw all that out by myself. But I wouldn't say it's less skillful for me to be able to know to go and do those things and apply myself to do it, and gain the skill and discipline and effectiveness in operating the AI and AI tools to achieve my vision, my aims, my goals effectively.
I mean, I'm in the same boat. I agree 100% with everything you just said. I mean, I'm not an artistic person, and it still does require a lot of work. I admit that. But I know people that do this sort of stuff, and they will spend weeks or months just to make a very short video, and imagine how much more work they could get done if they had these tools. They could get a lot more work done, because instead of manually doing the whole thing, they're making, say, 5% of it, and then the computer's filling in the rest. They're making the keyframes, they're doing the shots, they're making the models. I mean, to get to this point, you've done a lot. This is a lot of the work.
And they're directing it, they're programming it, and this is yes. I find it very foolish, naive.
It's more skilled.
I find it a pathetic socialist vision to say that I'm getting more tools, more efficiency. I need to, it's going to take our jobs. We're going to have less done. We're going to need UBI, as opposed to we can produce more value, more value. There's a very famous story about an economist that goes to a socialist country, I don't know, China, I don't know, whatever, and they're digging a trench using small shovels. And he says, "What are you doing? Why don't you get a machine? We can use a digger. We can go build the trench. Be 7 times faster." And the government employee says, "No, you don't understand. We're not looking to build the trenches. This is a jobs program." And the economist says, "Well, why don't you give them spoons if that's the case? You can do so much with a spoon. You can achieve a lot more with more powerful tools like a shovel. Hey, let's bring in even more advanced mechanical trench diggers, and you can get it all done much quicker." It doesn't mean that there's nothing for more people to do. You can go build the trenches, and you can get utilize the human capital to do other things that are more productive.
Absolutely. I mean, it used to be, if you were to go back in the Industrial Revolution, maybe 1 in 5 people were like a machinist or a textile worker or something like that. They were working in heavy industry, doing very manual processes. Of course, nowadays we have CNC machines. We have modern looms and things like this, so we're able to make far more textiles today than we did with the 1 million people working in textile factories in the UK in the 1800s. And we probably have maybe only tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of people throughout the whole world to make all of the textiles, to make the fabrics, not to sew the clothes. Obviously, sewing clothes and things like that, that's a different part of the clothing supply chain, but just the textiles and things like that. So, I think, we are still going to have people like this. And in fact, probably right now, the types of people that would currently make little product placement pictures and things like that for people's e-businesses, e-commerce businesses, things like this, for sales brochures and make signs and things for businesses, those people are going to start making videos and things like that. So there'll still be a demand for these people. But I don't know. I mean, I don't know how many of these people we're going to need. I mean, how many people do we need to machine things in machine shops now that we have CNC machines?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the thing is that the question, I guess, that we're getting to, or the hypothesis we're getting to, is this big tech crunch going to cause a recession due to AI replacing jobs, or do you think, or as I think the AI is going to bankrupt a lot of these tech industries, predominantly like Meta. I think Meta is gonna eventually lose. They doubled down and they've invested too much money, and Facebook is not doing well. Instagram is getting replaced by TikTok and other types of social media platforms.
I don't think that Meta will one day fail because of artificial intelligence. I think Meta will one day fail because they're a horrible company. And
That too.
and you know, there's this financial aspect that when will the financial bubble pop? And that's, again, I think AI is a factor, but I don't think AI has anything fundamentally to do with the fact there is a huge monetary bubble. I think that's to do with central banking and the QE infinity, and printing money is not backed by anything. So I think I don't actually think that AI really plays as a primary function of the tech bubble. It's one of the things that's booming the industry, and all the financial capital's coming in, and I'm anticipating that's going to collapse at some point. But I think really, we're looking for that another black swan event to cause the collapse. And I think that the Fed is going to continuing to support printing money, keeping things going. Don't let things collapse. You study 2008, you see that one goes, things start to happen. It's like a pot of boiling water. You start to see some pops, some bubbles rise to the surface, and pop here, there. Banks in China going down, tech companies lay off. It's bubbling, but no, it's not boiling yet. I don't think we're boiling yet, and I think all of a sudden it could come to a boil, and I think that would have to be a massive global event, like we're talking about a demand-destroying event, especially if there is global war, which is not. We may be. We may only have 2 years left on the Earth, depending how the United States navigates and engineers these next couple of years. We may be facing nuclear annihilation, which is none of this matters. If that happens, I reckon stock markets might crash, or if the prelude to that occurs. And I think these are these black swans, these more fundamental aspects, rather than AI this or tech processors or any of these things. I think they're just functions that will be regardless.
Okay, I agree. Yeah, I mean, it like I said, honestly, the money's drying up, and the venture capitalists, I don't think, are going to be able to really support a lot of this. That's where I'm coming to the conclusion that basically the tech industry is it's all speculation, and literally most of these tech companies aren't showing a profit. They basically are living on borrowed time and money from bankers and venture capitalists and speculators being the stockholders and the bondholders. And when like Nevada, for instance, it like I guess Lupiter had said that it was literally trading at the entire stock market of Canada. Is that right, Lupiter?
Something to that effect. I mean, it's trillions of dollars. It's like 3 trillion, 4 trillion. It's a huge amount of money.
So think about how many people, like, because of the cooling of the real estate market recently in some areas of the country and globally for that matter. Think about boomers and hedge fund managers that are like, hey, I got this new thing. It's called Nvidia. Let's go ahead and put the money from BlackRock into that company and speculate some more because it keeps going up. You know what I mean? And they're just looking for new things, a new idea. Like on Wolf of Wall Street. It's like you just come up with a new idea, and they're just continually speculating, and then once the hot potato stops, the music chair stopped, then what do? You know what I mean? I think we're at the beginning of that. I think October is going to be a very interesting year for the stock market, for the tech industry, as well as for housing. But it is what it is.
To understand this question, we need to throw back to the stuff that I learned at university, the stuff that you learned at university, Professor, about the life cycles of companies, the life cycles of institutions, the life cycles of industries, and the innovation curve. I think if you go back to that, I think that answers all the questions about the future of companies like Facebook.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, like the lifespan of a corporation, I think is less than the average age of a human life. I think the average life of a corporation is like 40 or 60 years before it either becomes merged into another company, acquisition, or it fails ultimately. Is about 40 to 60 years.
And these tech companies in America, they're like boomers. Boomers can't age gracefully. Boomers can't even grow up. You're asking boomers, hey, stop acting like a 5-year-old, please. Like, you're 75 years old. Can you act like an adult? Can you act like a 10-year-old or a 20-year-old? They don't even want to do that. These tech companies, they don't want to act like a grown-up company. They want to stay in the growth phase forever. I'm a young company. I'm not going to die. I'm going to live forever. I'm going to grow forever. $5 trillion, try $50 trillion. Come back in 10 years' time. This is ridiculous.
Yeah, exactly. It's just, I don't know. It's like, we're going to come up with a new idea. Let's go ahead and do the metaverse, man. And then like, hey, AI is cool. That's the new thing. Just like, going back to Enron. And they were like, hey, let's go ahead and do some word salad. I heard about this thing called authentic leadership. Let's go ahead and talk about it and say that our whole management team and executives are using authentic leadership. And then that'll get more stock investors into the company, more investment in the company. And it was just bullshit. It was just, I'm just going to use crazy words and new innovative words and new ideas to get the interest of the stockholders and the market. I think that's all it is.
And the crazy thing about the metaverse is, I don't know, have you guys heard of it? That is basically Second Life. In fact, they may have even brought the Second Life company to make it.
That wouldn't be. It wouldn't surprise me.
So this is like every boomer telling you about how the future is something, and it's some sort of crazy bullshit thing that they heard about like 50 years ago that's irrelevant. And this is what Meta is doing. This is what Facebook is doing. They're a geriatric, mentally retarded, senile person that needs to be in a rest home. Okay, Facebook, everyone was using it. Now it's IRC. If you don't know what IRC, Internet Relay Communication Chat Rooms, you don't know what that is, good. You don't need to know what that is, okay? That it doesn't exist anymore. It's gone. Yeah. It's dead. It's over. We're not doing that, okay? So Facebook,
that was like
who
AOL,
uses
right?
Facebook? Yeah.
That was like AOL.
That was before AOL. It was literally before AOL.
Okay. Yeah, it's like Linux and stuff. Yeah, that was the hobbyist and stuff. Yeah, it makes sense.
It's almost ham radio. And if you don't know what ham radio is, then that's also good, because ham radio is also dead. Like, we're talking about how many layers back of dead technologies can we go before something's like just completely, like, the irrelevance is irrelevant. But this is what Facebook is. Facebook, the majority of their users are corporations and boomers. Young people don't use Facebook. They use Telegram. They use WhatsApp. And that's why they brought WhatsApp. They use other platforms like TikTok. They use all sorts of businesses don't use it. They use Slack. They use other messaging systems. They use Microsoft Teams. They use Google Chat. Everyone is using everything except Facebook. Facebook used to have like 100% market share of social media. What's its market share now? 5%, 6%? Why is it worth all this money? Because these are rich geriatric boomers, and they're doing exactly what you're saying, Professor Redpool. They're doing the boomer investment strategy, and I absolutely hate it. They're taking their pile of boomer money.
Zombie economy.
Dragon horde. Yes, they're a zombie company. They're a dying company. They need to go into retirement. They need to die gracefully, age gracefully. They're not willing to do it. And they're taking all of the stuff that they've stolen and looted and made and plundered and all these resources they've accumulated, the billions, trillions of dollars, and they're pumping it into younger companies that are earlier on in their life cycle. And they're trying to get these companies while they're young so that they can prop up, just like boomers today. Boomers are bringing people from every single country on the planet. They're bringing hundreds of millions of people into the first world, into the West. Why? Because they want someone to wipe their ass. They want someone to pay their pension. They want someone to work for them as a slave in a rest home. They're not willing to admit the economic realities that they're in. Facebook is not willing to admit that it has a shelf life. A social media company today, it's not like a private business from the last couple of 100 years. Social media doesn't have a shelf life of 50 years. Social media has a shelf life in single digits or very, very low double digits. Facebook is already in a terminal decline. And when the boomers go, they'll have no users.
Exactly. Yeah, it'll just they'll have all of this like server space and like not being able to use it. They're gonna probably subcontract it out and then sell it off, and then eventually just we can't afford to maintain this, and then basically get merged into another company, acquisition, or like I said, this word mergers and acquisition, this is gonna be the new thing and the next like 5 years. And it may be more mergers and acquisitions with international companies with these multinationals. So you might see Hong Kong, Taiwan, Russia acquire some of these companies and just basically gobble it up and use their technology, and it'll go.
I think they'll double down. I think that what you'll see Facebook merging with other big American social media companies that are dying. And they'll say, hey, if we take two geriatric old dying companies, two geriatric old men, and they enter into a gay marriage with each other, then we can build something and keep this thing going for another 50 years. Now, obviously, to anyone that's got half a brain that's sane, that's not part of this woke liberal worldview, you can understand that this isn't going to work. This isn't going to work. If you take two failing companies and merge them together, you're not going to get something good as a result of that.
You just get basically two overpriced shitty companies, and you have a zombie company as a result, kind of like Twitter.
Look, we'll take 75%. We'll take 75% of the worst managers from both companies and we'll combine them. And then we'll make a less functional bureaucracy, and we'll have less competent people. And then we'll give ourselves salary pay rises while we borrow more money to prop this thing up.
Exactly. And then there's the big crash, like I said, I'm predicting, and that's going to come very soon. I think, I think it'll come sooner than later with the tech industry. Like I said, all this investment AI, it's like, that's great and all, and like, it's wonderful that everybody's investing in it. But what if the company doesn't exist when it's over? All they're going to do is have all of this proprietary, they're going to have all this proprietary intel and research and all of this data, and they're going to have to just sell it to Russia or some government that's going to continue to develop it. Because that's what I think is going to happen. I think America's going to crash economically in 2025, and they're going to start piecing off what's valuable. And what's valuable is the tech companies. There's not much industry. It's basically tech. That's what's left in America that's worth anything. The tech, and even the military companies is dog shit now. Like a lot of the stuff, a lot of the companies, a lot of the infrastructure is just garbage. It's outdated. There's other countries that are developing stuff much faster, and the only thing that's worth it for them to buy out and gut out is basically the tech industry, and that's what's going to be left. And they're going to just have to sell it all to these foreign countries that are developing much faster and much more efficiently. Like I said, India, Russia, China, so on and so forth. That's what I see happening in the next decade, is American tech industry getting gutted out.
I think Russian military tech is several years ahead of US military tech. Like,
I think so.
In hypersonic missiles, it's not unreasonable to even say they're a decade ahead. I hope not, but it could well be that in some areas they're a decade ahead. And even Turkey, I think, has a stronger army than the United States of America. Military depends. Army, I think, stronger. Drone capabilities seemingly stronger. When Turkey would be a formidable foe for the United States of America. Yeah, like when Turkey have the strongest army, again, it's not military, the strongest army in NATO. What's going on, America? And when America is valued, when they're spending $1 trillion on their military versus Turkey, I have no idea. It becomes very difficult to say it's not a bubble.
I'm very positive on America. I'm very positive on the American military and the American military industrial complex, because you can say that they're 2 decades or 3 decades behind some of these other countries now, and that may be true. That may be true, but at the end of the day, you know what? America's 6 decades ahead in diversity, equity, and inclusion. They're ahead in their environmental programs. I was talking about this the other day. It doesn't matter going forward. The future's not going to be decided by who has the biggest tanks, who has the the heaviest tanks, who has the most expensive tanks. It's going to be decided by whose tanks are the most environmentally friendly. Okay, so America has a lot going for it in the next conflict.
Yeah, that's right. Like if you're in the military, if you're in like Raytheon or any of these like tech, companies, innovation, make sure that you invest in tanks and howitzers that shoot confetti and rainbow confetti and make weird gay sounds and stuff when they do it. And I think that's a winning ticket right there. That's gonna sell quite a bit.
Yes, yes. We called this disorientation. We called this confusing. It's going to disorientate. It's going to confuse. It's going to distract. Okay, it's called OCD, and this is one of the things that it's actually one of our diversity officers came up with this idea, and we don't need lethal weapons anymore. Yes,
you dress the officers up in dresses and high heels, and you have them walk on the battlefield, and then the opposing force is going to look at it like cockeyed, kind of what the fuck is going on? And then that's when you bring in the big guns and you attack, because they're disorientated. Exactly. It's a strategy.
We don't need to fire a single shot. Look, as soon as people realize that we're coming to China to bring them gay rights and diversity and all this other stuff, we're not going to need to do anything. The Chinese military will shoot their own officers. They will shoot their own officers because what the Chinese people want, all these Chinese people, think about it. 1 in every 4 people transgender. Most people don't know this, but 1 in every 4 people is transgender. So you think there's 25% of people in the Chinese military. This is 500 million people right now that will die for the US empire just so that they can have transsexual rights. And then there's the homosexuals, then there's the minority groups, then there's the Muslims, I don't even think the US needs a military. We can just use the Chinese military. I think, a strong Chinese military is a good thing for America, because at the end of the day, this is just going to mean that America is going to have a stronger global empire when it wins World War III without firing a single shot.
We can use the Chinese labor for our military. On every level.
Why not? It's cheaper. It's more economically efficient. We can pass the tax savings on to our political donors.
This is true. This is the strategy they're using in Gaza and Ukraine right now. They're using proxy militaries, and they're just providing surplus equipment, and not replacing it because they have too much DEI in the manufacturing in the West, so they can't deliver on demands on contract.
One of the best outcomes of the it's a very grim topic, so please excuse my pain. One of the best outcomes of the conflict in Gaza is the United States military spent 200 some million to build a pier that did not survive a week. And then you look at a pier in China that cost less. That's like a proper infrastructure pier, and that's to last for the next century. And the United States military spent over $200 million on a pier that couldn't even last 1 week.
But you know how much profit we made on the $200 million pier? And think about it. They only have to rebuild that pier every 100 years. We have to rebuild the pier every 2 weeks. So who's smarter at the end of the day?
Yeah, you're creating jobs. It's a winning ticket, man. Creating jobs.
Well,
the innovation is where we start moving into the second phase, and we start hiring the local Hamas forces. We start hiring the local Gazans to cut the labor costs instead of paying American salaries to rebuild the pier every 2 weeks. And while we do that, that's going to distract them. So Israel, while they're busy making money building this pier, Israel is going to make territorial advances. They're going to make battlefield advances.
I love it, man. This is how an empire dies. This is how an empire dies.
So, in short, the crowd shield, whatever it was called, outage last week was a result of outsourcing the tech industry, globalization, outsourcing the tech industry to bad code and bad engineering teams. And one comment says that supporting mass immigration into your country to raise the GDP is morally identical to pimping out your daughter for cash.
That's fucked up.
And so it's these fundamental factors that I believe result in the crash, in the overvaluation. When people talk about a crash, they're looking at the financials, the financial system, the financial market, which is really trying to reflect the reality, the fundamental. And you can look at technical reasons, you can look at price, but fundamentally it's like, okay, we're valuing it at here, and really it's down here. Here's all the reasons why it's down here. If you're telling me you've got the best tech company in the world, and if all the human capital is not in your company, it's all outsourced to consultants and contractors here and there, I'm going to have to say, well, that probably isn't going to be well maintained, well designed, they don't have the human capital on this side. It's not going to be optimized, streamlined. There's going to be problems. What's their hiring practice like? What are the what are the talents of the individual programmers? And it's all these technical reasons that fundamentally mean the reason there's going to be a crash is the corruption, distortion, and crap that's largely government-led. So I disagree with you, Professor Red Pill, about the government investment versus private investment. I think that the real innovation, especially in these spaces, should be and shall be privately led, although there will be and shall be state attempts, especially coming to military, but I don't believe in them. I believe in the private sector, and I believe that's the way forward on these matters, because the state is DEI.
Yeah, I agree.
As someone with a PhD in DEI, I disagree with everything you just said. Look, you think people need to know how to program? Okay, we don't have that expectation of anyone that we hire. In fact, I don't have that expectation of anyone that I train. What I tell them, I tell them a few things. Okay, I try and keep it simple. I tell them, look busy. Okay, that's number one. We need to look busy. You need to look busy as an individual. The company needs to look busy. We need to look legitimate. Look busy, look legitimate. And the third thing I teach them is called GitHub. It's called GitHub. You go on GitHub and everything you need, it's already on there. You don't need to code anything. You just go on GitHub and you just get everything you need.
And you have to tell them that they're brave and beautiful.
This is true. Very true.
Yes.
Very true.
Very brave. Very beautiful.
Then we spend the next 59 days of the 60-day course teaching them how to call people racist and other names when they say that our products don't work. This is the main strategy of our corporation.
Do you happen to live in one of the Five Eyes? Canada, UK, New Zealand.
Australia, well, that's interesting. I actually consult to these people. They really like my stuff.
That's funny. Good stuff. Yeah. I don't know. I think we talked about everything we wanted to talk about on here. It looks like Adam's getting ready to head on out. What time is it in there in the morning? I think it's
nearly 6 a.m.
Yeah, 5:48 over there.
Look, we can start these earlier. We don't need to start these at this time my time.
No worries though, I survived. At least it's not 4 hours.
No, that was a long podcast. Yeah, 2 hours is fine. Most of our viewers have kind of tipped off, so they're
don't worry, we saved the best part for after everyone stopped watching. So
exactly.
You know, we value our audience, and if you stick to the end, and in fact, just skip to the end. Just watch it on the replays and skip to the end for the best parts.
Pretty much. Yeah, stream it later. I don't know. Any final thoughts, guys? Like, we can go to green room after if you want. Or at least Lupin and I can go to green room later. In my closing argument, I think that we're gonna see a tech crunch, or tech, like a digital end of the digital Gilded Age as a result of a greater depression in October. I think the market's going to crash in October from the data that I've seen. Other economists in the group, I'm not an economist, but like the actual economists and the trader guys that are in our Telegram group, links in the description, by the way, for the Gonzalo Legacy channel. We have a lot of economists in there. We have like traders, teachers, bankers, political strategists, all kinds of walks of life, very educated people in the Telegram group, and we talk about a lot of interesting things. But we have a lot of good fun too. So like we have memes and different stuff as well. So not only are the people in there educated and skilled, but they're funny as hell too. And yeah, I mean, for the most part, I think it's going to be a crash in October. I think it's going to be the I don't know about the dollar crash so much because a lot of these countries are still dependent on it, especially the Western allied countries. But I think there's going to be a major crash in the fall, definitely.
But before we go on, Adam, go on.
No, I haven't been following the predictions and the analysis here, so I'm just thinking about what he's saying, and I'll have to do some looking.
What do you think? What do you think's going to happen with the the war and stuff, and like how's that going to affect the economy? You think?
There's two philosophies. One is the Russian Federation made a statement a month ago saying something about 12 months. So that brings us to May of next year or around then. It's an odd statement to have made if they're thinking of wrapping up the war in the next few months. It makes me believe that they have at least a 12-month timeline there. Although you've got the election in November, so how does October? What's going to go on? You've got Zelensky. Finally, he said, "Oh, we need to, the war resolution sooner than later." But then, of course, they've still got the law saying negotiation is illegal. He remains without legal authority or lawful authority. And
he's also an illegitimate leader as well. He's yeah. Go ahead. Sorry,
although
I'm sorry.
the Rada remains legitimate under the constitution of Ukraine, but there's nothing about the president. But if the every time it's like Russia says they made a proposal a few months ago saying we can do it. We can walk away right here with the battleground. Just promise to be neutral. And USA said, absolutely not. She's not signing that. I said, well, that's a very generous offer, a reasonable offer. But
I agree. Russia should surrender. They should surrender, and Vladimir Putin should be publicly executed, and then everyone in Russia should become transgender and liberated and free.
Well, liberate all their property, give it to the Ukrainians as reparations, of course.
Exactly.
No. We're going to have both the Russian property and the Ukrainian property, and we're going to call it the free market.
Exactly. And they need to build tanks with like 4 gears in reverse and 1 forward, so that way they can reverse bout face away from the Western Front. Exactly.
So
but before we wrap up, I do have a question to ask for all three of us here, and that is, let's say that these tech companies start going under, right? And they go bankrupt, they get liquidated, they have the garage sales, they're selling everything that's not bolted down, they're selling the models, they're selling the AI, they're selling the data, they're selling everything. What are you people looking for that you're personally interested in, and what do you think they would have that's actually of any value?
I mean, the AI, the data information. I mean, the data collection of all the American citizens, that would be very useful for to find out who's got what and who's intelligent, who's got job skills, so that they can transfer them to the foreign countries that are developing, kind of like what the Americans did after World War II with Germany. So they can find all the scientists and like all of their data and like their information, and then just ask them if they want to come to Russia or India or China and that sort of thing. Yeah. Because they collect all of our data. So they know everything about us.
I am not an enterprise. Well, I do not have a big tech enterprise. I have no need for their models and data, information, AI, and capital. But yeah, there's value there. Certainly.
I'm looking at their foosball machines. I'm looking at their coffee machines, guys. Some of these machines, they cost like $50,000. They've got $50,000 coffee machines. I'm probably not going to get them. They're probably going to be brought by scalpers. But yeah, I'm looking at that. Even if I don't need it, I could buy it. I could resell it. I could flip it. I could make a profit.
There was a video of Lehman Brothers, I think, when it collapsed and someone's running out with the coffee machine.
Yeah, that's probably
really?
a $20,000 coffee machine. It's a coffee machine at a bank. I mean, it's not going to be cheap.
Exactly. First thing
and not only
I'm not getting my pension. I'm not getting my last salary check. Fuck you. I'm taking this $40 espresso machine. I'm taking it home. That's my.
I'm taking my chair. I'm taking my $1,000 chair. I'm taking the $20,000 coffee machine. I'm taking 10 of the $5,000 MacBook Pros. They're just lying there. Well, no one from the security guards are. No, but I mean, this is this is why they tell people when they liquidate companies, they give you like a message and they say no one's coming in tomorrow. They bring in private security. That doesn't work for the company, and they shoot anyone that tries to come in. The other thing I have to say, what I think is going to be worth a lot of money, I think the data is going to be worth a lot of money. I think there's going to be some entrepreneurs that buy this data because I think there's some very valuable information on this.
Governments.
I think yes, well, and private entrepreneurs, people like me, but with lots of money, and they're going to people will pay a lot of money.
Under the NDAA, under the Military Defense or the Defense Authorization Act or whatever, like in case if there's a sovereign or in case the federal government goes sovereign or insolvent, there you go. They could actually take over some of these tech companies and liquidate it for military application. And they can also sell it off as debts to like China or something. So they could say like, well, we're taking over Microsoft. We're going to sell off a percentage of the data to China to alleviate our debts to China. And that's
people will pay a lot of money to keep their porn history and other things private,
secret.
This is what I'm thinking. I think you're thinking of something different. I'm thinking that people's porn information, that's probably billions of dollars. We can probably pay tens of millions for this information. We can probably get billions of dollars for this information. And this is just one type of information people don't want to be made public. What about people, they're having a relationship and then, they're greedy and they like relationships. They really value relationships. So that's why they've gone out and they've got 5 other extra relationships on the side. Some of these people, they value their relationships so much that they want 5 of them. Then these relationships are very expensive and they'll be willing to give us a lot of money so that we can respect their privacy.
Exactly.
Do you work for the Mossad, Lupita?
No, I'm overqualified. They refused to hire me.
Makes sense.
Anything you want to add, Lupita, or you pretty much said it all?
I'm pretty much wrapped up here. I think we wrapped it up. If anyone else wants to add any closing remarks.
And that's it, man. We're at 2 hours. I think it was a good podcast. We went over everything that was necessary to say. And I mean, you guys as viewer, like I said, like and follow. If you want to buy a rat and e-bike in case if the collapse happens sooner or later, you don't have to rely on fuel shortages as a result of petrol coming in. You can charge it anywhere. Also, if you want to buy some, you get a free stock if you sign up with Robinhood. You can go ahead and buy some put stocks and short some of these tech companies with it. Not financial advice, but at least you get a free stock, and then you could probably make some money on the downfall of the American free market and or the American economy. And join our Telegram group. Descriptions the links in the description. And if you like the podcast, please give it a thumbs up. And thank you for coming, Adam. His links are in the description as well. And Lupiter is in the main Telegram channel, Gilded Legacy. I'm Professor Red Pill. Thank you for joining us. And I think every podcast from here on, and like I said, we're getting better every time. I'm working out the kinks, getting better bandwidth and better camera views and everything. So thanks for joining us. And until next time.